This podcast is also sponsored by Kadan Kadan. Kadan Kadan is a new groupage app that allows you to share space within a shipping container so that you can save costs when it comes to your logistics and transportation. Visit kadankadan.com to learn more or visit the Instagram page Kadan Kadan Official. One second. Okay, awesome. So, good evening, everyone. This is Malobi from the Pan-African Traders Podcast. We are back with another episode, and today we have Pamela with us. She has got some amazing things going on, whether it comes from the building of value chains to the cocoa to actually networking between Uganda and Belgium. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm really excited to get to know more about Pamela. Good evening, Pamela. How are you doing this evening?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this podcast. I'm really happy about that.
Same here. And I was saying before we started, I was really admiring the art behind you. It's it's pretty impressive stuff. Is it African art or something?
Actually, yes, it's a Ugandan artist. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. He did these waterfalls, and it's so beautiful. I have about 4 or 5 of his paintings in my house. They're just like great, big paintings.
It's definitely attention grabbing. I love it so much.
Yeah.
So welcome to the podcast. And like we normally do, we just like to get to know people that are participating in trade from Africa, whether it's exporting or providing services or anything to do with the lot. So can you tell us a little bit about you, your background? You said you're from Uganda, but you live in Europe. So your background can give us a little bit of context. And, after telling us about your background, maybe what you're doing today, what's your main business?
Yes. Okay. So, I grew up in Uganda, did my first degree there. Then I got married to an Italian diplomat and left Uganda, toured the world, eventually settled in Belgium in 2005. And I started my agri-business as a contract farming in Uganda in 2007. And well, since then, it's been one thing rolling after another. We've done about 3 or 4 value chains. And right now, I'm focused on cocoa value chain.
Oh wow! Let's get straight into it. I mean, I love that summary, but there's so much going there. Like it's hard to really unpack. I mean, from Uganda to Italy to Belgium. So, I mean, where do you feel most at home, or where would you call home right now?
That's a good question. I'm a citizen of the world.
Yes, I love that. I love that answer. Very political answer.
Yeah, even at home, we speak 3 languages. We speak French, we speak English, and we speak Italian, depending on who starts the conversation. The 2 elder boys prefer always to speak Italian. My daughter speaks more English, and then when we are with the community here, we speak French.
Wow.
And so it's
truly international.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that. Okay. You mentioned 3 value chains, and you said you're focusing on cocoa. So which one did you really start with? What was your first, or what gave you that sort of appetite for the agribusiness space before you decided to start taking it more seriously?
Okay. Yes. I started with Chile, but basically my background is I did a master's in agricultural economics, and I worked in FAO in Rome for 5 years before I moved to Brussels. When I left Rome and I came here, I was actually looking for a job. I thought I'd get a job at the EU. I saw that was difficult. And then I started looking for contacts of people who were doing agribusiness with Africa, because coming from the Food and Agriculture Organization, I wanted to continue more or less in the same trajectory. And so I happened to meet an Israeli company that is a company owned by Israeli based here in Brussels, and they were doing cocoa and spices in Nigeria, and he had been in Nigeria since 1982. So it was so funny, because when I went to him, I told him I was looking for a job, and he told me he didn't have a job, but he had a desk and he had all the contacts. If I had the ideas, I could create a job. And so I said, wow, this is an amazing opportunity for me. And I said, okay, I know farmers in Uganda, I know some of the poorest people in the world, and they do not have access to capital, they do not have knowledge, they do not have access to markets, but they have the land and they have the labor. So we put these things together and start teaching people. So I asked him, what can we start with? He gave me the list of products that he was doing. I said, okay, we're going to try chili, ginger, and sesame. So we discovered soon enough that sesame from ginger from Uganda was as good as ginger from Nigeria, but it was not competitive because our costs of production were too high. And then sesame from Uganda was not competitive because it's heavily consumed in Uganda. So no matter how big the production can be, it is all consumed locally, and we couldn't compete in prices with what is coming from Sudan and again Nigeria and I think Ethiopia. So eventually we zeroed in on chili. And so as a diaspora entrepreneur, it was a completely new experience for me to organize a full company while I was in Brussels, an online company, training, hiring a manager, registering the company with a lawyer, putting the staff, training them online, with, of course, frequent travels to Uganda. So my aim was to start with to support widows, because we were coming out of Northeast Uganda, where at the time, the civil war had ended, but people were still quite traumatized, and there was nothing really in the countryside. So I thought this was a way to rebuild that economy and support widows to settle back and use their land. And it was a very tedious process, I must say, step-by-step process. But again, I was coming from FAO, so I knew some of the things that needed to be done in the value chain. It's teaching the people that was very complicated. And, it took 2 years before we could export the first lot of chili, but because I wanted to have the quality right, everything right, tests and trials. And even then, we airlifted only 900 kilos. So I didn't even get the first target, But then as years went by, farmers started earning money. Then I started seeing, from 15 widows in the sample, we started going to 93, and then we went to 300, 1,000. Eventually, we were at 11,000 farmers registered as contract farmers, and we were exporting, 8, 9, 10 containers of chili. Those were about 5 years later. So it was really amazing, and with all the challenges that were behind it. So then chili led us to other things.
Wow. Okay, so the story to getting that chili is quite interesting, because you said that it took you 2 years to send out your first batch, and it was 900 kilograms. And a lot of people would get into agribusiness and they will be expecting to just go straight into it and like start moving containers on the first year or first couple months. So how did what kept you going when you saw, okay, it's just 900 kilograms? Because, a lot of people think 900 kilograms is not that much, after all this time. So what kept you going? What kind of kept you inspired at that point?
It was my mission that kept me inspired. If you set a mission-based and a vision-based business, that is the anchor, your why, the core of your business. And the mission of my business is doing business and doing good. The mission is doing business and doing good, but the vision is that everyone must have access to means for a decent livelihood. So, that mission is so anchored in my soul that every problem that would come, I just really go back to that mission. And why is that? When actually what really drove me to say, this is what I'm going to do, is because even if I grew up in Uganda, I was not really in contact with the countryside that much, as some of us grow up that way. But when I got married, I was living in Japan. I had my first child, we're taking care of the children, everything they have. When I went back to visit my mom, and my first child was 1.5 years old, I saw these 2 ladies who came to visit my mom. And they were sitting there, the grandmother, the mother and the child, and the grandmother was actually carrying this baby. And the my mom offered them tea. They were sitting under the tree in the garden and they were not drinking. So I just went out to them and they were looking really sad. And I asked them, what is the problem? Then the grandmother, who was carrying the baby, just said, we are only waiting for the moment. And I saw this other lady crying, and it just shocked me because I had my first child, and all my attention was always, the child coughs and I'm already panicking. And I'm looking at this lady carrying the baby in her arms and saying, we are just waiting for the moment. On that time, it dawned on me that there's not one single human being in the 21st century who should be sitting there waiting for a child to die simply because they do not have access to medical services. They don't have access to medical services because they do not have the resources to afford that. Now, I gave that lady $10, equivalent of $10 in local currency. There were only 4 private clinics in this town where I come from in Northeast Uganda. They went to the clinic and the child was treated. She was about 5 years old. And they came back to visit us 3 days later, and the child could actually stand. But more than anything else, what shocked me most was that that child was going to die of malnutrition. That was all that the child had, malnutrition. And it did really dawn on me so many things, that we are still far away, and unless each and every individual makes that effort to bring the change, we will not get there. And my commitment since then has been that you can just hear the passion in my voice, but I was so touched. And that is why I set my vision that everyone must have access to means for a decent livelihood. So for me, getting these women to produce chili, getting the rural communities to produce products that I can buy back from them and sell. I train them, I give them inputs and buy back and sell. I am creating for them that means for generating revenue that will provide them a decent livelihood, whether buying a bicycle, buying food, going to the hospital, paying school fees. And I've had all sorts of testimonies. But the best, I think, always we are expecting these testimonies. I can pay school fees and I can, buy a balanced diet. But one day, a man came to me and told me that I have to thank you so much. And I was looking at him and I was wondering why. And he told me, I need to thank you because since I started producing chili, my wife loves me very much because I take money home. And
That was a beautiful testimony.
Another guy came and told me he's 55 years old and he's been able to sleep on a mattress for the first time. Okay. Another lady came once, because I'm not regularly there, my team is there, but I go there to visit. Another lady once, I was there and she just really insisted that I go to visit her in her compound, in her home, to get in her house, because she had bought a sofa in her village. So she had bought a sofa, and now when you visit her, a guest does not have to sit on a local chair or on a mat anymore, but they can sit on a proper chair. Now, you understand? I mean, these are things we take for granted, as mattress, a chair, a sofa. You see, so this is the contradictions that we still have. And for me, the passion is really that. So the vision and the mission is what keeps anything going. And it has to be a long-term vision, a mission-driven business. Yeah.
Wow. Well, are you a public speaker? Because I was very entranced, and I was just like hanging on to every word you were saying there. It was a beautiful story, honestly.
I do that as well, yeah.
Yes. No, I can tell. I can definitely tell. And like you said, sometimes when you're driven by something more than just the money, it can keep you going, it keep you inspired, and that's a very important message to pass on to the listeners of this particular podcast. And so you started off with all these different value chains, you ended up with chili. And it was good that you actually shared the reasons why, you tried sesame, didn't work because of this and that. So eventually you ended up in the cocoa value chain. So can you tell us how you ended up there and why cocoa in particular?
Yes, it didn't take me very long, to discover the challenges that are there in agribusiness. First, we're dealing with climate, and there's no irrigation or anything. We had 2 years of severe drought where we lost almost everything. And then the volatility in market prices. Again, that brought me to go back into my studies to understand the difficulties of having one single item. So we needed to diversify. Diversification, the studies of I'm an agricultural economist, so diversification became a key concern. And having learned the lessons from dealing with a short-term crop or one-season crop, market price volatility, climate risks, I decided I'll do cocoa because it is a long-term crop. You really needed it to do a tree crop. You need a long-term vision, 20 years, 30-year vision. And I needed something that could be resistant to climate change, but also that could actually contribute to protecting and mitigation of climate change. And the advantage I had in this particular case was because my business partner, the gentleman whom I met in Brussels, who helped me to start, was actually dealing with cocoa when he was in Nigeria. So that came easy for me to put 2 and 2 together. And so I went for cocoa because, first of all, I wanted a long-term crop. Secondly, cocoa as a tree crop, it is good for carbon sequestration. In order to plant cocoa, it is necessary to plant trees, which indigenous trees. And also in the beginning, when working on cocoa, you need to plant other products. So whether it is a question of food security or long-term sustainability, cocoa turned out to be for us the best crop. Of course, you needed time to wait, the preparation and the breeding of the seedlings, the planting. I did a lot of studies. When I started in Uganda, there was no information at all on cocoa. The Ministry of Agriculture barely had anything. And so I started to do initial studies with the University of Trinidad, University of West Indies in Trinidad. We did a selection of different trees in the country, and we did what they call the identification of the different genotypes, in order for us to discover which are the ones that have the traits for high yields and more resistance to drought. And then we planted those on my farm, where now I have about 80 acres planted with cocoa. And we also have about 2,000 outgrowers who have actually planted cocoa. But it's also very expensive. And again, there are lots of lessons learned in terms of raising the funding for such an ambitious project. And it takes a lot of time, because it's not, investors want to invest in projects that are making a quick turnover. And there's also this thing that in Africa, actually, you can charge a very high interest rate. But it's exactly those kind of high interest rates in the financial industry that is keeping the growth of the agriculture sector behind. And those are some of the sectors which require policy intervention directly. So I went to cocoa because of the difficulties in Chile. And I thought combining those two would then give us a kind of stability in the long term. But more than anything else, I was also developing all of this, knowing that this could be a very good case study for policy, for students who want to join the sector. And, I think we've just experienced every possible good and bad experience in that to develop it. It really serves more for development purposes than anything else. So it's been very, very interesting to start. I didn't know that crop, but I studied it like a scientist.
Yeah.
And I know, we decided what type of seedling, the different varieties, different agroecological zones in the country. And then, coming forward to now, actually, I've just been talking with the Food and Agriculture Organization office in Uganda. So we are going now to develop a national cocoa strategy. And the good thing also now, Uganda has cocoa as one of the strategic crops. But of course, I've been vocal about it, and we are pushing it. So those are the kind of initiatives that are helping, which will maybe, some of us, I don't see that we've been, to for me, the way I've done it, possibly the big benefits I will not get personally, but the generations to come will get those benefits. And
That's what matters. Honestly, that is what matters. And sometimes someone has to go in through the door first and knock those doors down and take those arrows. But at least you have something to write and pass down and let other people know, okay, don't go this way, don't go that. And that kind of leads me on to the question of, like you mentioned with the cocoa, the financing, the interest rates are not that favorable. So, did you go through a conventional or commercial bank? Did you go through a development finance institution, or what kind of sourcing did you use to find funding for your cocoa project, or did you use just private investors? What's the best way, or what would you suggest people do?
Bank funding is absolutely impossible to work with when you're planting. Bank funding becomes useful when you're doing trade finance. So when you're just purchasing and selling, so that is in and out. And depending on the market price, it's very easy to calculate. You see the interest, you see the return on investment and the interest that you have to calculate, and then you can do that. So what I did was to focus a lot on development finance in development institutions. I was lucky at the time because I worked with the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, and they had just launched a call for proposals, and they were seeking ideas that can be replicated and that can impact on a large number of people. And I zoomed in right on that and presented my proposal. It took quite a while, about a year, to finish developing that proposal to and fro, because there was a lot of demand from, to meet all their criteria. That was difficult. And so I managed to out of 4,000 companies that applied for different projects at the time, only 17 companies across Africa managed to win grants. Wow. Yeah, so those were repayable grants, but without interest, interest-free payable grants. So that's one of the ways. And then there are other non-finance actors. Those are financial companies dealing with money business, financial businesses, which we worked with some of those. An example like Rabobank Foundation, Root Capital. Even then, we still got into difficulties with some of those, because then, by the time the cocoa yields is 5 years at least. And we reach maturity at 7 years when the yield starts coming. So it takes a bit of time to develop. If the financial institution doesn't have a good contract with you, and that's a mistake that I made. With one of them, I didn't pay too much attention, but that was because of not having the knowledge about how the financial institutions are operating. And so it's been a lot of legal issues as well that have, we've had to face. And that, I think, is the only way to actually manage to start a cocoa production. But with this example, with what we've done, a lot of attention from government in Uganda now is towards cocoa. So people who are going to come after me are not going to face the same problem, because it will be much easider for them to access seedlings from governments. You see.
Yeah. That's again, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. You started something, and it's gonna grow. I mean, when we think of cocoa in Africa, we normally think of West Africa, right? We think Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and you're kind of starting something that's going to be very impactful in the next coming decades. So I honestly appreciate what you're doing. Another question that I had is, with regards to, when I speak to people that want to get into exporting and stuff, this is the if I get a penny for this question, every time I get this question, is how do I find buyers? Everyone claims they have the right products ready, so let's just assume that someone has the right product. They have the cocoa or the dried chili. From your experience, what's been the right way or right approach to find off-takers or buyers for the products from Africa in general?
I find the best way to find buyers is to be present where buyers are congregated, and that is in trade fairs. Now, trade fairs may cost a little bit of money initially, but it's the only place where a buyer will be able to trust you as a supplier from Africa, if you're not an established company. And I have participated in all sorts of trade fairs, from California to Germany, in the UK, in Belgium, in China. I have been to as many trade fairs, because when you meet a potential customer there and you have that face-to-face dialogue, already the fact that they meet you in that specific event it creates confidence in the customers. Then the rest is about discussing the prices, whether you have a product price fit, a product market fit. But again, I was possibly luckier because my co-founder was already in business and point me to the right directions. But nevertheless, I did a lot of the rest of the activity by being present in the trade fairs. There is no other way to really get those buyers aside of that. Where our countries in Africa are still behind is that they are not organizing and not supporting entrepreneurs to be present in those trade fairs. When you go anywhere, I've been to several, in Italy, especially Italy, in California, you find that the country is, the chambers of commerce are actually organizing for their entrepreneurs, and they take huge space, huge stalls, and then every entrepreneur just has maybe 1 square meter space where they can show their products. But then there's a group of 100, 200 entrepreneurs participating, and that is paid for by government. Because I have my company also registered here in Belgium. So the Belgian even if I'm presenting my Uganda products. So you see, are we connected?
Sorry, the network cut out for a bit, but I got what you were saying. You were saying I lost you when you said the Belgian government does what? Sorry, because your company
organize it. They pay for their entrepreneurs. They pay for their business, for the business owners to participate in the trade fairs. But because I have my company registered in Belgium, then I qualify to participate in a booth that is under the Belgian government with my Belgian company. You see, not with my Ugandan.
That's a little hack. That's a little hack for people that are paying attention. I like that.
In the West, you can register your company and make sure that you're registered with the Chamber of Commerce. That's another way to meet also exporters, connect with the international chambers of commerce. That's very, but yes, if there is anything that, as entrepreneurs, we need to strengthen our relationships with government and insist that the Chamber of Commerce actually organizes events where government participates in paying the fees, because the fees are very high to hire a booth and to transport the goods, to do the expositions, to print the material, information materials. It's quite expensive. But that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I've got a company registered in the UK. So after that advice, I'm going to register with the Chamber of Commerce in the UK as well, to kind of just, see who can help me the most. Because, as people that live in the diaspora, you've got to make the most of the country, your host country as well. So that makes a lot of sense. So definitely thanks for that advice. And then another thing that I want to ask is, we spoke before we got onto this call. You mentioned quite a few different value chains, and when I look at your LinkedIn, there's a clear offer there. There's you can build value chains, agribusiness value chains in 3 months. So can you tell us a bit about the different value chains that you can help with and the actual service that you're providing there?
Yes, I've discovered there's so many people who are potential and who would love to start businesses, but they simply do not know where to start, how to start. It's really the ABCs of the business. So I also have a coaching company. It's called Walk in Prosperity. Before I used to call it AgriBiz Mentorship Program. And I've tweaked that to call it Walk in Prosperity, because I am also in the school of human potential mindset and personal growth. So all the business, or the mindset especially. And I think that one of the key things, one of the key areas that really pushes a person to succeed is the way they think, their state of mind. What you believe in becomes, is what manifests. So I had a very good mentor called Bob Proctor of the Proctor Gallagher Institute. I studied with him for a very long time. Before, my challenges were there and they were different. When I started doing mindset and human potential, I discovered that, many people use possibly only 5% of their potential. Why? Because there's a lot of doubt, self-doubt. When a person gets an idea, I want to start a business. For me, that idea is divine. It's God-given. And the reason I say it's God-given, because God say, ask for anything. So the moment you have a desire to do something, it is really the answer to your prayer. You have to move to action. Now, when you get a divine idea, I want to start a business, and then you start telling yourself, oh, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I fear to fail. Where will the money come from? You're blocking all your blessings. And so I realized people start businesses, they struggle because they do not have a wider awareness of the universal laws. Let me put it that way. I always say, when Einstein said energy is everything and everything is energy, but we don't know what that energy is. So we miss a lot on our intuition to do things, and yet we should really focus on what the intuition is and follow that, and it is always correct. I'm also a very strong believer in the word, or in the word of God. So I'm a big Bible reader. And then I realized, only after I started doing mindset and human potential, really studied a lot with Bob Proctor, that is when I realized, whenever I open the scriptures, it's like the instructions are all there. And I said, so why didn't we follow these instructions before? It's so easy. Ask and it's given. Persevere, have faith, trust. And it's simple things. Prosperity is meant for everybody, but we block our prosperity by not believing in the capacities that we have. And that's the reason why I say we are using only 5% of our ability to do whatever we want to do, because of that doubt. So when I work with entrepreneurs, I teach them, it does not matter what business they are engaged in. The process is the same. You first have to set a goal. Do you really believe in that goal? I'm always asking entrepreneurs only 2 questions. I want to know, okay, decide what you want to do and answer 2 questions. Are you willing to do it, to do whatever it takes to do it? If the answer to that is yes, and I ask you, are you able to do it? And if the answer to that is yes, I said, you're going to flow. Then now I need to start taking that entrepreneur through the steps. Why they have to understand why they got that idea. They have to also analyze why they didn't do it before. What was the paradigm? What is the paradigm behind it? What was the doubt behind it? Many people think because you've come from certain families or poor families or poor backgrounds that they cannot achieve exceptionally well. And I want to always get rid of that paradigm, because we are living in the current moment. Any moment is the present moment. Don't fear the future, forget the past. We have to work now, take action, and action has to be organized action. That means you have to organize the way you're thinking. And the way you're thinking is based on a program that you have to set for yourself. Meaning every single day you have to decide what are you going to do. You have to make a plan and have those goals. And those goals are going to be business or income generating goals, but they're also going to be personal goals. You have to take care of yourself. You have to eat well, you have to sleep well, you have to exercise, you have to drink water, you have to socialize, and you also have to have focused time on your business, whatever you're building. Now, if a person gets into that understanding and that awareness and knowing that outside there's an energy and there's a God that is supporting everything that we need to do, and you get a balance, then we are working through the business strategies. How do you set up a business? Is it going to be a contract farming business, import-export business? Are you going to develop a brand, a service business? Whatever it is, but I need that people to have that foundation. And only when they have that foundation, then the rest of the business becomes easy because they get aligned with the business. It's what I call going downstream, you know? And when you meet a problem and you're aware of the universal laws, the law of attraction, the laws of vibration, you understand how those laws work, you always are going downstream. People think, you know, what is law of attraction? Laws of attraction is God's laws. It's the law of vibration. So what I always explain is that when you desire something, it's God-given. And since right now you and I, we are talking, but there's no link, there's no direct line or anything that is connecting us. And yet we are talking, you feel my passion, you feel my energy out of my voice. That is what they call the ether. That has always been there from time immemorial, in the creation of the world. Yeah. But somebody managed to create this instrument that we are using to capture that. That means we can communicate the same energy. The moment you want something, you're always going to align with somebody in one part of the world who exactly can complement you. So we vibrate. Our voice is right now vibrating. And we link. And we are linking constantly with people in different places. So if you are on a good, positive vibration, you can only link with people who are going to provide you the same service, exchange at the same vibration. And that is what they call the law of attraction. If you doubt, you push it away. You push that opportunity to meet the right people away. If you are confident and have faith and you trust, you're going to always meet the right people. You're going to attract the right people. You know, you've seen sometimes somebody entering a room and you feel they have aura around them. They have the energy. They fill the room. Yeah. This is the kind of energy. So this human energy, this what Carl Leon said, you know, this energy around us can actually be photographed even. Now, if we start to understand these concepts, it is the supernatural, it's the higher part of us. And we stop depending on the senses, what we hear, see, taste, smell, and touch, then our success is guaranteed. And I've had personal first-hand experience on that, especially with the Coco project, you know. And now I trust my instincts. And sometimes if I'm not feeling good or something came across and disturbed my energy, I just stop. I don't do anything. I wait until I'm calm and I'm again in the flow, then I start to do things. So I teach people not to go against the feeling, you know, not to force things, but to calm themselves, to harmonize themselves and listen to that information, because we are constantly getting information from the universe. But what do many people do? First thing in the morning is a good example. They wake up, the first thing you're going to think about is the problem. I don't have enough money. I don't have this. I don't have that. So you're going to think about the problems of the day instead of thinking, I need to feel good and attract this money into my life. So you have to, everything is created 2 times. You have to see it before you feel it. So if you're seeing problems, you can only attract problems. If you're seeing opportunities and possibilities, you can only attract those. Therefore, the current problems that we have, or the lack of money or whatever it is because of where our thoughts were in the past. You can stop that, start with a new thought every day, and it will bring at a certain time in the future what you require now. But that time in the future will be your current moment in that, you know, in that time. So we are always, you get it? So I try to work on that with entrepreneurs, and it's an amazing thing. I trained them for 6 months. And usually people who get out of the training after 6 months, it's usually a one-on-one class. And I sometimes do only strategy courses where we have a group class for 2 months, and we're just dealing with, you know, business plan, financial model, you know, how to get customers, doing your market research, and so on. But when we do a one-on-one, we are really working on what I call thinking into results, because the moment you start to think the right way, your results are guaranteed, because you apply all the universal laws, law of cause and effect, law of compensation, you know, law of attraction. There's so many universal laws. They're all the same at the end of the day. It's about how you think. So the conscious mind, subconscious mind, the reaction of the body, how you attract everything. It's amazing. It works like magic. And if you understand this and you understand the scripture, then I realized that so many people have been using that in the West. So how come in Africa we don't know most of that? You know, so I read the book called Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, I've read that one, yeah.
Together with this Bible, together. And the moment I see something and I confirm it in the Bible, I say, this is the way I have to react. But you see, you have to train the brain. It takes time to train the mind, not the brain, the mind. And so that it becomes a natural part of you. And I tell you, I have followed that book and it just opened for me so many avenues. But then I integrate with many other teachers like Abraham Hicks, Ask and It's Given, The Law of Attraction. I listen to Neville Goddard. I've been reading The Science of Getting Rich and so many books. So reading and studying is a part of the trajectory of an entrepreneur. And if you look at the history of all those who have really succeeded, Dangote, I believe that he's doing the same. You know, like
yes, 100%. Oh, this is beautiful. I wish we could just keep on going because I have so many more questions, but maybe another time we might have to have a part two because I wanted to dig into, your history and how you got into the FAO in the first place and the other value chains. But I also like to keep these podcasts kind of, short enough so people can get the information. And I think the stuff that you just mentioned now is a really good way to wrap it up because it's not just about knowing the technical aspect of, oh, this is how you find buyers, this is how you grow cocoa. It's also about the self-development, it's about the mind, it's about your thought process, it's about the belief and the and also when you had those things in the beginning with the chili, your vision, why are you doing this? I think also that those things are sometimes more important than the actual technical aspects because the technical aspects can be learned, whatever business it is. So I really love that you went into a lot of detail around that. And just to kind of wrap things up, I'd love to get some websites or social medias so people can reach out to you on all the different amazing things you're doing, whether it's the walk to prosperity or the value chain stuff, or even if you want to sell your cocoa and Asante Mama, anything. Can you just share some of those websites and social media so that people can reach out to you?
Yes, so on my social media, you find me basically by name of Pamela Anyoti-Peronaci on Facebook. And on LinkedIn, on LinkedIn is the same. Those are the main areas you will find me. I'm not so much on Instagram, but I'm registered on Instagram as always Pamela Anyoti. That's the handle, and on Twitter. Yes, and the website is www.asantemama.com. It's the product website, and the other is mainly funnels as walkinprosperity.com.
Fantastic. And the Asante Mama, just to kind of wrap it up, what kind of products have you got on Asante Mama, if you can let the audience know?
We have herbal tea and chilies, turmeric, and cacao beans that have been coated with chocolate and moringa powder.
And are these finished products or are you selling for like containers and bulk quantities?
Actually, these are finished products. So
Okay.
containers and bulk quantities, we deal directly with the customers in different countries in the EU and in the US. But Asante Mama, these are finished products. Yeah. We have the brand, finished products, and then we deal with the bulk items different.
Amazing, amazing. Wow, this was an amazing episode because I love the two halves of it, the kind of historical how you got to where you are, and then the mental self-development part because and I love that you mentioned that part because it's so important, reading, developing yourself, building that confidence, understanding the laws of attraction, getting to the Bible. All of these things actually help entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's been amazing getting to know you. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. And have a lovely evening.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
For sure, for sure. All right. Good night.
Okay. Bye. Have a nice evening.